electronic devices for the duration of the meeting. And welcome to the May 20th, 2024 Finance and Audit Committee meeting. I am Councilman Gil Schussler, and I'm the Finance and Audit Chair. The meeting format is hybrid, and we have some members who are physically present at the HART Administrative Office, 1201 East 7th Avenue, Florida Conference Room, and the rest of board members are participating via communication media technology. There is no quorum present, so no action to be taken, but the committee can form a consensus on action items. So if you'll please look at the screen of your devices. An image of the flag is displayed. Please join me, if you can, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we will now accept public comment. There's no one scheduled to speak. Do we have any? We have no comments. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay, nobody present. Therefore, this concludes the public input section of this meeting. In your packet, well, since we have no quorum, we can't approve any minutes. We'll push that off to the next meeting. Therefore, we'll move on to presentations. Presentation 4A, the fiscal year 2024 proposed program of project POP. Ms. Loretta Kirk, Chief Financial Officer, you're recognized to present the 2024 fiscal year proposed program of projects. I can't even say it.
Good morning, Director Schussler, members of the Finance and Audit Committee, Mr. Drainville. This presentation actually kicks off the fiscal year 25 budget process. The Federal Transit Administration, known as FTA, mandates that the transit systems develop a specific list of projects referred to as the Program of Projects in order to receive Section 5307 funding. We are also required to seek public input on the projects and to hold a public hearing. In addition to the 5307 funds, we receive other federal formula funds that we will discuss today. These funds will be budgeted in the fiscal year 25 budget in order to fund the capital budget and to reimburse HART for some operating expenses. Before I continue, I do want to recognize and introduce you to the member of the Budget and Finance team that's responsible for the Program of Projects, Ms. Gail Torres. If she can just stand and be recognized. Thank you. So I just want to let you know for this presentation and next presentation, I'm just the voice of the finance team, but I have the people here, the staff here that actually does the work. So this is what we're going to discuss today. I want to briefly discuss the calendar for development and approval of the POP, discuss the apportionment of federal funds, the proposed program of projects, the public outreach that we are going to undertake and have already started, the other federal funding, and finally, the board resolution. This is the calendar specific to the POP. Today, we're going to have the presentation on the POP as well as the presentation on the budget. And as I mentioned, the POP funding is actually included in the fiscal year 25 budget. We will have a public hearing on May 30th. We will compile the information received from the public hearing, bring that to you at your board meeting on the 3rd when we ask you to approve the POP. And on that particular day, we'll also ask you to approve the proposed operating budget and the capital budget that we'll discuss in the next presentation. Then on August 19th, we'll have a detailed discussion on the capital plan and the capital budget. And of course, those programs from the POP are included in that budget. And then in September, as usual, we have 2 public hearings. These dates are tentative because we cannot have the public hearing on the same day that the school board or the county has their public hearing. So once we receive their dates, then we'll adjust our dates if necessary. But right now, the 2 tentative dates are September 9th and September 23rd. And you know that our public hearings have to be after 5 p.m. As you can see, the total apportionment to the Tampa-St. Petersburg Urbanized Area, or UZA, was $54,137,606. And you can see in the middle of the schedule that HART will receive 43.27%, or $23,424,338. And that is the amount that we use to develop the POP. And this slide actually shows the POP. This is the only formula funds that we receive. These are the only federal funds that we receive that we can actually use to reimburse ourselves for operating expenses, and those operating expenses have to be related to maintenance. So our total operating projects, $20,710,168. Total capital projects, $2,714,170, for a total of $23,424,338. I'll just pause so you can see the list of projects, and if you have any questions about that list, I'll be more than happy to answer them. This is a slide of our public outreach. As usual, we do advertise in La Gaceta, the Tampa Bay Times, and you can see down at the bottom, the Florida Sentinel, in addition to extensive outreach on our homepage, our webpage, and into the community. We also have to send a letter to providers of transportation in this area, informing them about the POP, and you can see that we did that on May 16th. And the public outreach will conclude on May 30th with the public hearings that we have scheduled, and there's 2 public hearings scheduled on that date at the Marion Transit Center. This is a schedule of other federal funds that we'll receive for this year. And note that the federal funds are fiscal year 24, that we budget for fiscal year 25, because once we receive the notice of funding, we actually have to go through the process of applying for those funds and receiving those funds, and we won't receive them until we're into the fiscal year 25 budget year. So these are the other 2 sections of federal funding, and these are formula funds. Section 5337, $1.1 million, and for state of good repair, and Section 5339 for bus and bus facilities of $1,691,139. I do want to note that there is a number that's missing from this slide that we have not received. We normally receive. And for the past many years, we received an additional $4.5 million that was flexed through the state, FHWA money flexed through the state to the FTA for capital projects. And we have not received notice that we're going to receive that money as of yet. And if we don't, then we will be down $4.5 million for our federal capital funding. So with that, that brings me to the recommendation that the Board of Directors approve the proposed program of projects and authorize the Chief Executive Officer to apply and accept all fiscal year 2024 Federal Transit Administration funding. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. John, do you have any questions? No. I do. The $4.5 million, is this just procedural issue, or do you think there's a danger that we're going to miss it, or any communication whatsoever? Or?
Ms. Torres has been in contact with the state. We have, when you'll see in the next presentation, we have received other federal funds from the state, and that number has increased dramatically. So it could be that they're substituting that for FHWA, but we just want to make sure that we know exactly why we are not going to receive those funds.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no other comments, thank you, Ms. Kirk. Are you going to do 4B? I am. Oh, you got to switch books.
I'm good.
Sorry about that. Okay, Ms. Kirk will present the fiscal year 25 proposed budget. Afterwards, if there's any questions of her or staff.
Good morning again to Chair Schischler, members of the Finance Audit Committee, and Mr. Drainville. This is a presentation on the CEO's initial proposed budget. The intent is to discuss this budget today and submit the proposed budget to the members of HART, the City of Tampa, Hillsborough County, and the City of Temple Terrace in compliance with the HART Charter. This proposed budget, which is considered our base budget, is subject to change based on feedback from this committee, the board, and additional review by Mr. Drainville and staff. After we deliberate on the budget over the next 4 months, the final budget will be presented to the board in a public hearing. And you know that we have to approve the budget in a public hearing, not in a board meeting, on September 23rd. For your final approval. And as I stated, the September 23rd date is tentative once we know the dates of the school board and the county's public hearings. Again, as I stand here today to present the proposed budget, this is a collective effort with input from every chief, every department director, and the budget is developed collaboratively by the budget and grants staff that I want to introduce you to. You met Melanie Williams, and she sits here to my left. You met her at the last board meeting. She's our new Director of Budget and Grants, and I'm pleased to say that she will stand here to present to you in the future. She just started, so I volunteered to present today as a courtesy to her. Gail Torres, you met her. She's a grants management and financial analyst. She does the POP, and she works on all the federal grants. Melissa Ebisher, if she can stand up, she's our grants management financial analyst. She does our state grants, and she's the one that's going to find out what's going on with that 4.5 in addition to Gail, because it's state money that's flexed to federal money. And then Maurice Plevos, he's not here this morning, but he should be in later on today. Okay. Let's see if I can advance this. I'll let someone come and assist me. It's not advancing. All right. Okay, don't go away. Okay. So this is our agenda for the budget discussion. We'll go over the budget development calendar. Just want to remind you about some legislation from the HART Charter that drives this process. Go over our assumptions for revenue, our projected service, the assumptions for expenses, and then the proposed operating budget. On the capital side, we'll talk about the fiscal year 25 to 29 capital plan, the summary. We'll go over it in detail. We'll do the same for the capital budget. Go over the summary and the detail, remembering that the capital budget is the first year of the 5-year capital plan. So you don't approve the plan, it's here for your information, you approve the budget, the capital budget and operating budget. Then we'll talk about our fund reserves and end with the action item and corresponding resolution. Okay, this is the calendar, and of course, you know, this is May 20th, so we've already talked about the PLP. We're talking about the proposed budget right now. Then on June 3rd, we have two actions again. First on the PLP, the second on the operating and capital budget. Then on the 17th of June, if we find it necessary to have an amended budget for fiscal year '24, we'll bring that to the Finance and Audit Committee. And we're reviewing the budget currently to just make sure that we will end fiscal year '24 within the approved appropriation. If we estimate that we will not, then we will bring that to you. And that's why it says if necessary. And hopefully it's not necessary, but we'll make that determination in the next several weeks. Then on June 28th, which is prior to the due date of July 1st, I'll send those proposed budgets to the city of Tampa, the city of Temple Terrace, and the county. And then on July 10th, if necessary, and if we decide and determine that we need to have a amended budget, we'll have a public hearing. We're required to have a public hearing on the amended budget at least 2 to 5 days prior to your approval. And then on July 15th, that will be the date that we'll bring that amended budget to you for approval. And we'll also have board action on the proposed millage rate, rollback rate, and date of public hearing. And you know that's required in compliance with our TRIM process. So we'll have to look at the dates because I think we have a committee meeting scheduled that day, but we have to have board action on the millage rate to comply with the Department of Revenue's regulations. So we'll look at that date and what we're going to do on that date. Then on August 5th, and these two dates may flip, but in August, we're going to talk about the service plan in detail, and we'll also talk about the 5-year capital plan in detail. And then on September 9th, we'll have our first public hearing, that's tentative. And then if our public hearing is our final public hearing is on September 25th, then on September 9th, we'll also advertise for the public hearing because we do have to advertise 14 days in advance of you approving the budget. Okay, this is just language from the charter, just to let you know why we're here today in May presenting the budget, because by the 15th of June, we have to prepare and submit a budget to the Board of Directors on the operating budget, proposed planning budget, and our capital planning. So this is the only date that we can present to you and then have it approved by the board on June 3rd to meet this deadline of June 15th. And then on or before July 1st, I have to submit those, or we have to submit those, that budget, the approved proposed budget, to the legislative bodies of HART, and we know those legislative bodies are Hillsborough County, the city of Tampa, and the city of Temple Terrace. And this language, of course, from the charter, just states that we have to have those public hearings to approve the budget, and that final public hearing has to be advertised 14 days prior to the scheduled date of the public hearing. So this is just language taken from the charter to remind you why we're here today and to support our schedule that you saw a few minutes ago. All right, so now in terms of revenue, and of course, I want to remind everybody, this is a base budget. These are initial assumptions, certainly subject to change over the next several months. So ad valorem, and it may come in higher, but we have to estimate conservatively until we get those final numbers. We are projecting $79.7 million, or 8% increase over last year, over this current year, fiscal year '24. And of course, we budget at 95% of projected revenues. And that's not only HART policy, that's state statute, that you only budget 95%. And then our transfers to capital, significantly more than last year, $7.8 million. That's primarily because we're not expecting to receive the 4.5 that I talked about a few minutes ago. And the capital needs are just so great here at HART that, in consultation with the CEO, the proposal right now is to put additional money into capital so we can meet those capital needs. Federal operating grants, $20.7 million is the portion of the 5307 program of projects that I just talked about. State capital grants, and this is where I mentioned that we're expecting more in 25 than we certainly had for 24. And you can see we have a block grant of $6.9 million, customer choice 285, and then we have funding for 2 routes. Fare and pass revenue, $11.2 million, and this is based on the projected ridership and our average fare. Local contributions certainly will probably change before we get to the final budget, because this is the money that we receive to support the streetcar, and we haven't done the streetcar budget. That starts in June. We'll have our first presentation to the streetcar board members, THS board members, in June. Advertising income, 1.5, other income, almost 500,000. Historical streetcar, again, that's a placeholder, if you will, until we complete the budget for the THS streetcar. And then interest income certainly is higher than it has been in years past, about comparable to fiscal year 24, but we have more funds to invest, and certainly the interest rate has been higher. And then fund balance to reserve, we haven't budgeted anything for fiscal year 25, but of course this year, fiscal year 24, we budgeted to transfer $18.5 million to our operating reserve to put us in a better position to prepare for a rainy day. Okay, so this is our proposed service, and of course this comes from our planning department, and you see the schedule every year, basically the miles, projected miles, hours, and ridership for each mode of transportation, fixed route, paratransit, and streetcar. And you can see in total, we're projecting 9.4 million miles, 746,000 hours, and ridership of 14.3 million. And I'll just pause for a second as you look at that chart to see if you have any questions. Moving on to expenses. These are our assumptions for salary and wages, and this is based on 808.7 FTEs. Salary and wages, $56,791,162. Fringe benefits, and I have just a little summary there of what's included in that line item, fringe benefits, $13,330,036. And health care, our preliminary projection, certainly subject to change based on any feedback received from our broker, but we know that health care usually increases about 10% a year, or at least 10% a year, $12,899,546. Operational contract services, $6,849,392. Parts and supplies, $6,778,667. And again, it just kind of summarizes what's included in those line items. Fuel, $6,117,554. And we always put the fuel projections in so you know what it's based on, and you can see for CNG, $1.25 for diesel fuel equivalent, diesel fuel at $4 a gallon, unleaded $3.60. Again, of course, subject to change as the months go by leading up to the final adoption of the budget. Administrative other, $1,200,000. Administrative contract services, $1,777,217. Legal service, $450,000. Utilities, $1,226,304. Marketing and printing, $480,343. And taxes and fees, $354,183. Leading us to the operating budget summary. I gave you the projections for revenue, the service projections, and expense projections, and based on that, this is our proposed operating budget for fiscal year '25. This is the revenue, total revenue, and of course, our budget has to be a balanced budget, $113,421,990. We do have the fiscal year '23 actual, fiscal year '24 our budget, fiscal year '25 projection. You did ask us to put the projections in the budget as we move forward. And then we have this year, we have a plan for the 2 out years, and in this case, fiscal year '26 and '27, so that we can start projecting, like we do with the capital plan, out a few years to be able to note and notice anything that we need to address currently so that we don't run into deficits, unmanageable deficits in the out years. This is the budget from the expense side. I just read off those numbers, but again, the total, $113,421,990, again, a balanced budget. In terms of our reserves, this is the calculation of the desired operating reserve according to board policy and our actual. But with the budget of $113,421,990, we're required to have a 90-day reserve equivalent to 90 days of operating expenses, and that simple calculation is $27,967,066. Our projected balance October 1st is $36,907,232, again, because we're transferring that $18 million into reserve to plan for when we need to have money to pay for expenses. So as we called it, a rainy day fund, if you will. Okay, these are our fund balance reserves overall, because in addition to the operating reserve that I just talked about, we do have 2 self-insurance reserves, the risk reserve and the medical reserve, and you can see the balances there. We also have a capital match reserve that we use to replace equipment or use for our capital match. And that we're going to use, we currently have $4.8 million. We're projecting to have 4.6 at the end of, going into the fiscal year, and we want to have 4.5 at the end of the fiscal year. So we had to make and I don't know if you noticed it, but on the revenue side where we have let me just show you, if I can go back, because I didn't point it out. At the bottom, you can see the fund balance transfer to capital at $4.8 million. That's actually going into the local match fund so that we can match the grants that we're receiving from the state and otherwise. So that reserve will be very fluid in fiscal year '25. And then FTA liability reserve, that's just increasing by the interest that we will receive. That's a reserve that we have in the event that we have to experience early disposal of federally funded property and have to reimburse the FTA. So that's another reserve. But you can see that right now we have $38 million in reserve. Going into the new year, we want to have $46.4 million, and we want to end the year, fiscal year '25, with a $48 million overall reserve. And I just want to note that the 2 self-insurance reserves, according to our charter, had to be adjusted after we received the annual audit. And so we haven't adjusted it, so we may see some changes there because it's based on an actuarial report, and we have to review those reports to see if we need to add or delete to those two reserve funds. But if we do, we will certainly let you know. Okay, turning to capital. This is our five-year capital plan, fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 29. Notice that the total capital plan is $291,472,815. The fiscal year 25 year is the budget, and that's why it says budget, because the first year of the capital plan is the capital budget of $66.4 million. The plan for fiscal year 26, $41.3 million. Fiscal year 27, $72.1 million. Fiscal year 28, $85.4 million. And fiscal year 29, $26.1 million. Just want to remind everybody, this is a plan. First year is your budget, the out years are a plan, and they could look a lot different in the next year plan. Okay, and I'll just very quickly go through the detail of the capital plan. For vehicles and maintenance, the total for the plan is $105.8 million. And of course, for the budget is $25 million. You can see that the major line item here, and it will always probably be for vehicles and maintenance, are buses. And you can see that every year we are planning to purchase buses for a total plan of $73.7 million. And then you can see the other line items. Certainly the third item is the paratransit flex vans replacement. So we do have a bus replacement plan, always trying to purchase buses and as well as the paratransit vans. And you can see the paratransit vans are programmed for the 5 years at $12.9 million. Okay? And then I do want to draw your attention to the radio system. You can see a $6 million. That's a fairly substantial number, certainly because the radio system matches our CAD AVL that you'll see in a few minutes, our computer-aided dispatch automatic vehicle locator system, and that matches that. So anyway, this is the total for vehicles and maintenance. And I'll slowly go through those in the event that there's any questions about the detail. Okay, facilities and construction. The largest item, of course, is the heavy maintenance facility. And you can see that's programmed over the 5 years for $143.4 million. And you can see the other projects for the total capital budget, $22,275,000. And then, of course, the capital plan, $146, $125, $480. Technology, $11,899,875, with the majority programmed and budgeted for fiscal year 25. And you can see that the major project there is the CAD AVL, the computer-aided dispatch automatic vehicle locator system. And then on this slide, you have three categories. Certainly the major is the bus stops and shelter total for the 5 years, $25.4 million, $24.5 million, I'm sorry. And then for fiscal year 25 budget, $6,818,038. And you can see we program for bus stops and shelters, and we had that discussion with the board at the last board meeting. We program for bus stops and shelters every year. Planning and studies, total of $1,050,000, and then, of course, for the budget, $450,000. Safety and security, we certainly invest in safety and security every year, and we're mandated by the federal government to spend 1.75% of our program or projects money on safety and security projects. And so you can see the 5-year total, $2.2 million. And of course, the fiscal year 25 budget, $601,000. So again, the 5-year plan, $66.4 million for 25. Budget, 41.3 for the 26 plan, 72.2 for the 27 plan, 85.4 for the fiscal year 28 plan, and the fiscal year 29 plan, $26 million. And this slide just simply shows the projects that I just talked about for the capital budget, $66,473,261, with the corresponding revenue, because of course it has to be budgeted also, and we have to show where the revenue is coming from. So we have projected capital revenue of $66,473,261, and you can see the sources. Where we have discretionary grants, that means that we have projects programmed that we can only fund if we receive discretionary money. We don't have formula monies for it. We have to apply, but we are very aggressive in applying for our federal discretionary money. So if we receive the money, then we will be able to purchase the projects that correspond with that. Then the capital reserves, that's using the capital reserve that I mentioned to you, where we're going to have, where it's going to be fluid. That's actually coming from the reserve, and that's why we have that transfer to increase the reserve back to $4.5 million. Then we have the state money, $6.6 million. The community project funding, that's a portion of the money that we receive from Castor for our BTI projects. So we received $5 million, and we plan to use $3.7 in fiscal year 25. And then you can see where we programmed the 5339 and 5337 funding. 5324 money was a one-time source that we received from the FTA, and we don't expect it to receive it in fiscal year 25, but we did receive it in fiscal year 24. And then the 5307 funding. I'll pause again to see if there's any questions related to that.
I have questions from before, but I'll wait till you're done with the rest of your presentation. John, do you have any?
Okay. And when you ask questions, that's why staff is here. They'll be glad to answer them. Okay. And then, I won't go through all this detail because it was in the capital plan, but it's in your presentation. This is the detail of every category for the budget, but I've already covered those items. So with that, yeah, I've covered these already. So with that, it brings me to the committee action item that we're requesting that you review this action item and move this to the board for approval on June 3rd. So with that completes this presentation.
Okay.
And we'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kirk. I did have a couple of questions.
Sure.
And this may be a Justin question. When we do the calculation of the fare box recapture, is it fair to keep the reserve transfers in the number, or to keep it apples to apples, comparing it to other regions?
Okay, did you understand the question?
Can you repeat it? You got me on that one.
The fare box recapture calculation, all right? Do we do it against $113 million, or do we do it against $113 million, adding back in those transfers to capital into reserves?
We just generated off the projected ridership and the average
Yeah.
per boarding. So it's like 79 cents per boarding. So that's the only way we estimate the fare.
So we're
box.
not doing the 11 million divided by the 113?
Correct. It's
Okay,
solely generated based on last year's dollar per trip per boarding, and then applied to next year's ridership projection And then obviously it's a 0 for streetcar because it's fare-free, so it's bus, para, flex.
Okay, just in case that question comes up from the board meeting, because there is some concern with that issue. The other question deals with the reserves. If you can go back to the one reserve slide, it looked like it was going to end up at 27 million this year.
No, 27 million is the calculation. That's 1/4 or 90 days of the
I thought-
113.
Okay, but I thought there was one that showed the projection at the end of '23, or maybe not.
Right there. I didn't have it at the end of '23. I had what we currently have, but we still have to transfer $8.5 million to get to the 36 million. So we haven't finished all of the transfers. So
Okay, all right.
current is what we have in the bank today.
Okay, that's what concerned me, is it was really only increased by 9, and we're moving 18, so we're.
We still have a transfer to
Okay,
make.
all right, so we
We-
didn't start 9 in a hole. Okay,
Yes,
all right.
we don't want to transfer too early because we don't have to transfer back. We want to make sure that once we transfer, that we can leave it in the
Just
bank.
make sure we're starting at 9 million in a hole, is that?
No,
the result?
not at
Okay,
all.
Cool, that was my 2 questions. Well,
Okay.
thank you. Any other questions by anybody? Mr. Drainville? Okay, thank you, Ms. Kirk.
Thank you.
Okay, item 4C is an overview of the ad hoc committee recommendation to the HART Board of Directors. David Smith? Huh? You doing it? Jan's doing it? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. David's online.
Hello, David.
Yeah, Jan's gonna do it. Hi, good to see you all.
Miss Jan, you're up.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Knight, and staff members. So on 4C, the title of the item is.
You're muted, Jan.
That's a good start. Usually I'm told to pipe down. The title of the item is Overview of the Ad Hoc Committee Recommendations to the HART Board. What I'm going to focus here today is the topic of conversation, which has been the focus of the committee, which is the millage rate, and as it sets right now in the charter, and how the statutory framework affects that. So if I could, Chapter 163, 565 through 58 is entitled Regional Transportation Authorities. I'm going to step back a little bit to give you the context. I know we only have 2 committee members here, but in order to keep moving forward, as I know that you would like to do. The charter was created in 1979 and was only last amended in 1980. So the charter amendment process is referenced in 163, 567, and therefore you need to look to the statutory framework as we move forward in the charter amendment process. As you know, right now, the charter caps the millage rate at a half a mil, 0.5. But in the statute, allows up to 3 mils. So the amendment process for your charter is the same as the original charter. And as I recall correctly, at the last board meeting, there was a charter review committee that was appointed and will be convening to review the charter. This is only one thing that may be considered by the charter review committee for recommendation to the full board for their consideration. So this is for your ad hoc committee recommendations. Article 9 is amended by a vote of the board that is ratified by the governing legislative bodies of each member. It has to be ratified and executed by those same bodies of all members. Now, with regard to this specifically, because this is a special taxation district, we need to look to Chapter 163, 570 with regard to ad valorem taxes. This says that you are not to exceed 3 mils, but that allows HART to increase its millage if it so chooses by amending the charter. The current charter, Article 6, Section 2, is not to exceed 1/2 mil. If the determination is made that millage is to be increased, then moving forward, the process would be that the charter revision needs to be approved by the board and then ratified back to their governing bodies. It requires a county approval ratification, and that's in section 163-571 Florida statutes. We actually had a meeting. David might want to join in on this. We had a meeting with the city attorney of Tampa, with the county attorney, the city attorney of Tampa and her deputy, with the county attorney and Sam Hamilton, which was, I think he's the deputy county attorney, and the city attorney of Temple Terrace to review the statutory language and make sure that the attorneys for each of the members were all on the same page as far as what the words actually mean on the paper going forward. No sense going forward if you're going to end up later on down the line having different interpretations of it. And as we sit here today, everybody agreed in that meeting that the reading of the statute, which requires the county to approve the increase in millage, is just that as if there was going to be a difference of opinion between board members, which you would not want going forward, the county has the weighted vote, so to speak. Did you want to join in here, David, at some point? As far as the meeting that we had amongst the other attorneys? You're on mute.
I know, I just saw that. Basically, whether or not the county has a statutory basis to be there in advance, we need to have all parties agree because of the uniformity requirement for ad valorem taxes under the Constitution. So whichever route you take, it's the same thing. This board, the HART board, can pass a resolution to amend the charter and can indicate the manner in which it wishes to amend. Then that has to go to the county and the two cities for approval, no matter what. So that's the process. I think the board needs to decide what it wants to do. Obviously, you can't take any action today, but once the board decides what it wants to do, it goes to the other jurisdictions for action.
And that answers the question that had come up in one of the other conversations that we had, is could you have two jurisdictions that would allow for the increase in the assessment, but not the third? You have to have all three. And so and then of course, once you ratify those changes, it has to go to a referendum. And the referendum statutorily must be approved on a ballot of a general election, not a special election. And a general election is defined as an election held on the first, it is very specific, on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November in even-numbered years for the purposes of filling national, state, county, and district offices and for voting on constitutional amendments not otherwise provided by law. So that would be not this year. We wouldn't be able to make the deadlines for getting on the ballot. I had spoken to the supervisor of elections a couple of months ago, and that deadline to have ballot language would be the first primary ballot, which would be in August. So as you can see, you've got quite a process to go through here to make sure that everybody is in support of moving forward. And then the earliest you could do would be the 2026 general election. So at this point, that would be the determination of your charter review committee, any recommendations from this committee, which couldn't be done today, obviously, but the board could discuss if they wanted to increase the millage, which would be, the first step would be revising the charter. And that just gives you the opportunity. You have to revise the charter, and then you would have to decide if you're going to actually impose that and go to referendum.
Okay. But in order for the board to, in order for HART to do anything, the charter has to be reviewed. To do, I mean, we can't even, it makes no sense to even discuss it unless we review the charter.
Correct, with regard to increasing the millage, yes.
Anything. I mean,
Anything, well, there's other items, yes, that if you wanted to revise the charter, you would have to do, the board would have to make that vote.
Weren't there other provisions of the charter that are somewhat antiquated, being 40-some years old without anybody looking at it in the past?
Yes, sir, in my opinion, I would say so. So there are opportunities, and the report that came out from FDOT identified some other issues that would require charter revisions, such as the makeup of the board.
Okay. So even if the charter was reviewed and said, take it to one mil or $1.5 million, okay, irrespective of whether that is actively sought after, and given the current political environment, it in my mind, it'd still be prudent for the board to at least position themselves for the future, so that there'd be something to work off later, if nothing else.
Correct.
Okay, all right. That's what I'm hanging my hat on as far as moving forward with the charter review. I think we still need to do it. I believe that there's enough substance that needs to be fixed, for lack of a better way to put it, or at least updated, to continue with the charter review and the amendment process, in my opinion.
Yes, sir. And in reading through the charter, and in my opinion, I think that there is clarity that could be added to the charter as well. So the review committee would be necessary.
Okay, very good. Okay. Any comments or questions, Mr. King?
Well, not regarding the millage rate per se, I think I understand that. And I understand that there's some housekeeping matters we probably need to look into, because the last time it was revised was in the 1980s. What about the board composition, though? How would that change?
Well, the statute says that, well, how would it change? Right now, there's a population process that's set up.
Mm-hmm.
The statute says that the charter just has to include how the board makeup is going to be determined. It does have to include 2 representatives from the governor. That's, and 1 representative from, hold on, you caught me on that one.
Each of the municipalities.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, David, can I chime in just a second? I just want to make sure I'm in the right meeting. Is this the safety meeting?
No. This is finance and audit. Safety meeting's at 11.
Okay, thank you.
And representation, yes, from representation from each member. But right now, it's set up on a population basis, which increases as the population increases. And there might be consideration for a different process.
Okay. The 2 governmental appointments by the governor's office, they historically haven't been filled for at least the last 8 years that I can think of.
Yes, I think the last was 2019.
Yeah, John McLean. He was the last gubernatorial.
2019 to 2021, and we've been in contact with the woman who is the head of administrative appointments for the governor's office. She is now aware of this and has indicated that she has some candidates in mind and will present them to the governor, and we're hopeful that that will move forward. As you know, under the statute, the governor's failure to fill those positions allows the board to fill them. I think there's been a reticence to to do that in case it could backfire on HART. But if the governor, in fact, is going to move forward with these appointments, that should happen pretty soon now. Chelsea Aaron is the woman who's in charge of appointments to the governor's office.
Okay. Just to clarify one other point. If you said that the county has superpower to be able to just nix anything, or?
No, not nix anything. With regard to the increase in the millage. So you could have other charter review issues, but under 163-570, it says that you're not to exceed 3 mills on taxable property in the area affected by such authority with the approval of the county commission or equivalent governing body of such area, and the area being the Regional Transit Authority area. So since and there's a definition that the contiguous boundary of the county encompasses the other members, so it has to have the county commission approval.
Okay. Well, that given the structure, the county, state, or state, county, city structure makes sense.
Yes.
That they have the
Yes.
authority over that. That I understand. Okay. All right, cool. What else you got?
That's all I have for 4C.
Okay. Mr. King, any other questions?
I'm fine, thank you.
Mr. Drainville, any staff members have any questions? Hopefully we'll proceed with this as we go forward, at least, if nothing else, at least make the effort to review it and update it where possible and position the board and the authority to do what needs to be done in the future, irrespective of current political climates. I think we need to at least try. For 6 years, I've sat on this board, and it's been, well, we're woefully underfunded, but nobody's done anything about it. Well, let's try. If we can do it, we can do it. If we can't, so be it. That's the will of the board, so.
Well, and once the Charter Review Committee starts their work and identifies those issues and takes them to the board, then you've got your process started.
Yes.
And then once those votes are taken on the charter review, then the charter amendments are handled the same way as the original charter. And once they're ratified by the members, then they're filed with the Secretary of State. That completes the process.
Nobody said this was going to be an easy process. Nobody said that at the beginning.
Writing a
Anyway.
constitution.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jan and Mr. Smith. I appreciate your efforts and the presentation. All right, on to the committee actions. Since we do not have a quorum, item 5A is to recommend to the Board of Directors to authorize the CEO to exercise option year 2 of the contract for regional, state, and federal legislative services of Holland and Knight. Mr. King, do you concur we should move this forward?
I agree.
I agree. Okay, we'll move this forward to the Board of Directors for final review. Item 5, whoops, I lost one. 5B, I'm sorry. A write-up proposed resolution to form a recommendation to the Board of Directors to authorize the CEO to exercise option year 1 of the contract with American Guard Services for security guard services and authorize future option year. Do you have any questions, Mr. King? I have none. Anybody, staff members, have any concerns with this? Okay, we'll move this forward. Consensus then to move this forward to the full board for June 3rd? 3rd. Item 5C, for recommendation of the Board of Directors, authorize CEO to exercise option year 1 of the existing contract with Mid-Florida Armored and ATM Services for cash processing, TVM cash and change machine services, and to authorize future option years. Anybody have any questions, Mr. King? I agree. Move it forward to the full board for the 3rd. Item 5D, to write up and a proposed resolution in your packets to form a recommendation for the HART Board to approve proposed program of projects, the POP, and authorize the CEO to apply for and accept any and all fiscal year 24 Federal Transit Administration funding. Any concerns, comments moving forward? Concur to move it forward. Okay. Item 5E, recommend to the HART Board of Directors approval of the fiscal 2025 proposed budget and authorize the CEO to submit the approved proposed budget to Hillsborough County, City of Tampa, and the City of Temple Terrace. Do we have I'm sure we have consensus to move it forward. I do have one question. Was Plant City in the beginning part of HART? And they voted to extricate themselves? They did? Okay. I've not been able to find that anywhere. Okay, all right. So we'll move that 5E, move the budget onto the full board for consideration on June 3rd. Let's see. Oh, first reading of the HART Board policy revision. Ms. Jan, what you got?
Make sure I pipe up here. Well, as we're aware, the committee can't take any action without a quorum here. But what we have is a proposed revision to your general counsel policy under section 140.03. As you recall, back in July, there was a presentation about considering revisions to the policies. Mr. David Adams did a presentation and identified some of the things that might be considered. And Ms. Mandel had said that we would work on those policies. As time went forward and the contract for the general counsel's position needed to be considered and rebid. We did not work on the board policy, waiting for the contract to be determined who was going to be awarded the contract. Once that was finished, Julia had said that we would get back to work on the policies to be revised. So this is the first one to be brought forward. That's why it's taken, that was an explanation of why it's taken a little bit extra time than everybody had considered. So what we have here today is a product that actually was discussed between your in-house counsel, your general counsel, and Mr. Adams was part of the conversation, as I indicated earlier, and in the drafting of it. And what this does is it sets out a structure for what is now known as your general counsel will be identified as your board counsel, and what their duties and responsibilities are more clarified in the policy. It also identifies that you have in-house counsel who would be led by the Director of Legal Services. And then you have have your contract counsel, which would be picked up or contracted with for specific items, complex issues that need to be handled by a contract attorney. So those are the revisions we have in your board packet. It requires 2 readings to change the policies, and generally it comes to a committee and then recommended back to the board for their consideration and have the second reading at the board. Since we can't take action today, it's possible to put it on the board agenda for consideration twice by them, as by the full board, or potentially it could be continued forward to the next committee meeting.
Well, I have no guarantees I'll have a quorum at the next meeting either, so I would propose that we move this to a full board action, at least for the initial reading on June 3rd, if it's ready.
Okay,
If it's ready to go, I would do it that way because,
it's ready to go. We have, what you have in your packet is the strike-through and underlined version so that you can see the changes, which, sometimes makes people a little crazy. So we put the clean version in there, and it's a lot easier to read through. But at least you can see the revisions and the structure that we were trying to create.
Well, unless there's any objections from Mr. King, I have no objections. Is there any staff, Mr. Drainville? I say we could keep doing this for months, okay? And I think this is an important process that we need to complete. We've been playing with it for almost a year now, so I propose moving it to the full board for at least the initial reading on June 3rd.
I agree.
Okay. Is that all right with you guys?
Yes,
Okay, good.
absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions regarding item number 6? Thank you, Jan.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Drainville, you're recognized for any updates.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning again. So 2 sole source procurements have been added to the sole source report since the April committee. The first was Sutrac Corporation. This is the streetcar air conditioning parts for $136,632. Sutrac Corporation is the original manufacturer of the air conditioning units that were procured for the HART streetcars back in 2016. They are the original OEM for the parts, and installing any non-OEM parts would void any warranties on these air conditioning units. The second is the UTA, or Urban Transportation Associates. These are automatic passenger counters for $29,520. HART's flex vehicles do not currently have APCs, causing the operators to manually track ridership and to be manually entered into the HART databases for each route passenger counting. So HART planned upgrade to the Caddy VL requires integration with UTA's APCs for fixed route and flex van service for tracking ridership. Moving on to task orders, for A&E General Consultant Task Order Report. Since the last committee, we had one task order amendment was issued to EXP US Service for the technical advisor of the CAT AVL project to participate in the evaluation process and provide expert assistance in negotiations and contract development. For BTI task orders report, one construction task order was issued since the last April committee. The task order was issued to Florence Construction Company to construct a bus stop with shelter pads and landing pads on the east and west sides of Manhattan Avenue at Oklahoma Avenue. For the BTA A&E Design Services, one task order has been issued since the last committee. It was issued to Burns and McDonnell Engineering Company Incorporated for the design services for the shelter pad and landing pads at the intersection of Main Street and Willow Avenue, then the shelter pads and landing pads at the intersection of Main Street and Rome Avenue. For a notice of solicitations, there was two. Solicitation for an executive search and recruiting services for a professional search firm to provide executive search and recruitment service for executive management in various positions as required by HART. The term of the contract is a 3-year base with 2 one-year options. The estimate not to exceed contract value was $200,000 for a 5-year term. The second is a solicitation for a contract to upgrade the eBoard boardroom to a fully integrated audio-visual boardroom. A successful contract will provide design, equipment, installations, warranty, maintenance service, and training. The upgrades will allow for cleaner audio, the ability to switch and record meetings using a wide-shot camera or audio only, transcript of the meetings, closed caption service, and stream live on various streaming platforms. The estimated contract value is $333,514. And this project will be funded through a grant. That concludes my procurement report.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any old business? I do have some. Ms. Kirk, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but audit issue update, head count, employee recruitment.
Always have to look to Mr. Drainville. Yes, Director Schisler. As a matter of fact, after our last board meeting, we did convene a team to address the audit issues. We've had one meeting. We do have a meeting scheduled tomorrow. Our plan is to have the updated policies and procedures in place by June 30th and the training done by June 30th. Excuse me, and we are on track to complete that. In terms of staffing, I think we mentioned that we have one open position. I believe that position was offered a week or so ago. So I think now we are fully staffed, but you may see a request for an additional position in the fiscal year 25 budget, and I can mention that today because I think Mr. Drainville has discussed that. So we're fully staffed, but we may need another staff member. I know that question keeps coming up at the board meeting. And so we did, just kind of analyze where we are, but we are on track also to have the procedures in place. And in terms of training, Ms. Kirk will do that training.
Okay, good. Okay, the last question I have then is I sit on several boards and dealing with ARPA funding. Does HART have any ARPA funding December 31st deadlines that we have to be concerned with for money being allocated and encumbered?
No.
I didn't think so.
That funding, it will be fully utilized this year, and I'm looking to Gail because she will request, she's the person that's tracking it and will request it, and our plan is to have it all drawn down before September. So we are in a good position there. So that the funds that we have will not lapse. We will draw them down.
I apologize for the repetition on that, but I just get,
No, it's very important.
It's very
We had
no, it's
$18
scary,
million
right,
to
so-
draw down this year, and she's drawn down, I believe, 9 million, and she has an additional 9 million to draw down. But she's
Okay.
tracking that, not to worry.
okay, good deal. Thank you very much. Okay. Any new business? Appearing to be none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for those that did attend. I appreciate it.